Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Deaths, back with another Kamihime PROJECT video. Now, this one is part 2 to the Souls guide, so if you're looking for a specific soul that's not in this video, they are in the first one, so keep that in mind. The first one has all of B class and C class, but only half of A class. So I'm covering the other half of A class and all of S class in this. So, that said, you may or may not want to check both videos. It all depends. If there's a certain ability you're looking for or a certain soul you wanted to see covered, then it's in the first video. But also, this video has a bunch more of the souls that either get better with specific weapons or have some like mastery point effects or whatever. I will point those out as they go along, so there's that. But I don't cover the stat increases from the mastery points because that's more up to your own personal preference, but they are there. But all I can say is it's just aim towards whatever a soul leans to. Like, if you have a defensive soul, you probably want the defensive ones. If you have an offensive one, then maybe you want the combo rate, the stinger, and maybe the attack power increase. Ability damage if they have it, something like that. But, anyways, going back into this, the A class, I've already covered Arthur, John, Andromeda, Solomon, and Siegfried, so they're in the first video. Continuing where we left off is Mordred. And Mordred is one of the souls that you're probably going to use quite a bit if you don't have the stronger version, which is Paracelsus. Or Perseus, I mean. But this soul, again, like her previous ones, like Asmund, they deal increased damage to enemies that got debuffs. So there's that. They have a status debuff resistance that they give to the entire roster of souls once they master, so there's that as well. But you need Asmund and Rosencruz for this soul, so there you go. Now, this is part of the reason why you really would start using some of the debuffing souls, because the first ability, which you can not share to anybody else, attack and defense down in B frame, along with poison, along with burn, along with drowning, along with I think it's called putrefy on our side, along with dizzy, along with blind. That's a lot of debuffs. And the damage over time ones aren't all that great, but the blind, the dizzy, that's going to be very helpful. The attack and defense down, that's also going to be pretty helpful. This is an ability to definitely use. If you don't have Perseus, then you're probably going to use this soul if you want to put blind on the fire malicious enemy, because they do a lot of combo rates, and that can really help towards that. Like, blind will really help out in some fights, so keep that in mind. If an enemy normal attacks a lot, try to land blind. Or the combo rate decreases. But, second ability that Mordred happens to get is one of the ones that, you probably will use. It was called Vicissitudes of Fortune. I don't know why it's called Ups and Downs on this one, but it's a special type of, skill where you can lower the debuff resistance to enemies, and you can also increase your own debuff resistance. So, you will absolutely be using this if you want to land debuffs more often. And that's even if you put it on other souls. So, that's something to know. The third ability, you may end up using this as well. It's the first time we deal with anything that deals with the enemy's orb count, which is their charges. Because when they're maxed out on orbs, they're about to do some little special type of attack or skill or whatever that generally makes the fight a lot harder for you or much worse. So this will increase the time they need in order to do those. So the maximum orb count will go up by 1. As far as I know, there is no means in the game in order to increase it more than 1. So if there's already one that's already up, this is just going to refresh it. So that said, it is a very, very powerful debuff, and most debuffs and buffs end up being raid-wide when they come from the souls, so keep that in mind. Now, this next one, you may also use as well. It's an EX ability, but you have to use it on Mordred, Asmund, Perseus, like that entire line of souls. It takes 15 mastery points to learn, but she deals damage and removes 1 orb from the enemy, so 1 charge basically. Combine that with her third ability, and you can delay the enemy quite a bit. Especially on Perseus. Perseus has a lot of orb control. But, it's a pretty good EX ability, so that's something to know. The second one, basically the more debuffs an enemy has, the more damage this skill is going to do. Most people don't even worry about this ability, so it's there if you want to try and make them a bit of a nuke, but first off, you need to land a lot of debuffs in order to really power it up, and then second, there's better stuff to use, so I wouldn't really go after this one. It's also 15 MP if you do want to learn it. This big one, though, is going to be it's a 10-turn debuff, so it's not time-based, it's 10 turns. But it takes 100 MP to even learn, and you can only use it once per fight. But for those 10 turns, enemies have their attack and defense lowered by 50%. And it's an exclusive type of debuff, so it's only going to work for you. It won't work for the rest of the raid. But you basically got the, I would like to say the soft caps on the attack and defense debuffs, but there's like different types of mechanics with that type of stuff, but you got your 50% right there. And it is guaranteed to hit, so you're not going to miss. I do believe an enemy might be able to remove it though, so be careful of that. And it only lasts for 10 turns, so after 10 turns, you basically got a dead slot. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, also, she does have a combo rate increase whenever enemies are debuffed, so that's another little sad thing to remember. It's not that much of an increase, but it's still pretty helpful. Now, going into the weapons, because this is where things get pretty important. Whenever she does any sort of burst with either one of her special weapons, Mordred will put a combo rate debuff on enemies. So, if you don't want to use the EX skill for the combo rate, this is where you get it from. Now, the elemental attack one, it's basically going to add a mo gauge reduction to her outrage ability. So, her outrage, I do believe, is the first ability. So, you're going to basically speed up the rage bar drain when you use that, and the elemental weapon. The other one, which is the HP one, removes a buff instead of removing some of the rage bar. So either one can really help depending on the situation, but the HP one tends to work a lot more than the elemental one. But still, depending on what weapon you want to give to Perseus, that still depends on what weapon one of these are. So if you want the HP weapon for Perseus, you need an HP one for Mordred. So that's something to pay attention to. But if I was to pick one, the HP one's got more utility. The elemental one is just more for if you're trying to like deal out damage and trying to get past the rage bar faster. So that's something to know. Now this next one is the first one you're probably going to try and really invest into like a later soul with, which would be Kaspar. But D'Artagnan, or D'Artagnan, it's hard to pronounce her name sometimes, but another drop rate soul, so increased drop rate debuffing chance or whatever, and then also more HP as she levels up. Master bonus is going to give every soul more HP, so there you go. You need Granule and Cassiopeia to unlock her. Her self-recovery with buffing is actually pretty strong at this point, so that's something to know. 2,000 HP to recover one shot is a lot, and it's 6,000 when you get it max ascension. So that's something to know. 35% attack up isn't that strong, but it's nice. 35% defense up, however, is pretty strong, but there are stronger defense buffs than that. Her snatch ability is going to do 3 stacks of it, so that is what you want to have. And if you're using Kaspar, you're either going to be using this or you're going to be using the EX version. So that's something to know. You may also want this soul for this ability as well, which is called Sniper Shot. 20% attack and defense down on all enemies. 20% is a lot for a debuff, so that's something to know. It's starting to get more common where we have 30% or higher, but 20% is definitely a good one. So Sniper Shot is a good EX skill to have on a multitude of different souls. However, these next 3 abilities can only work on the Kaspar, Granuel, D'Artagnan, those line of souls. So the first one is the MP15 Snatch. It's basically Snatch third, but it deals damage. So there you go for that one. But it's all enemies, I do believe, so it's also AoE. So that's something to know. She could basically land up to six stacks of Snatch when you combine this with Snatch third. Now the second one, you deal extra damage based on how many stacks of Snatch is landed. Honestly, you can ignore this ability as well. It's there if you want to make them a bit more of a single target damage nuke, but there's better stuff to use. Like this next ability, which is called Snatch DX for some reason, but it's 100 MP. You can only use it once per fight. But it basically tries to land 15 stacks of Snatch on all enemies. So you're generally going to be maxing out the Snatch stacks, period point blank. If this is the first thing you use in a fight, you're pretty much just going to land stacks on every enemy. But it's a once per fight, so it's generally reserved for when you are either on the last enemy of something like a tower floor, or if you're in a raid. But it is very, very helpful because it will just like full power everything that's Snatch related. And it's not just the soul that does it, some characters can do it too. If I remember correctly, Mammon Awakened is one of them that really needs something like this. So that said, this is a very good EX ability, but it's like 100 MP. And her passive is also are pretty helpful towards the Snatch stuff too. It's like she gets more assault based on how many stacks, and then she lowers the cooldown on all Snatch based abilities, but the 100 MP one has no cooldown. It just is a once per fight thing. So there you go. So don't worry about Snatch cooldown if you're using that 100 MP skill. But speaking of which too, her weapons are kind of loaded towards that a little bit, so there you go. I know Kaspar's both are, so generally I would suggest going after the elemental one, but maybe you might want the HP. It all depends. But her combo rate goes up whenever when D'Artagnan uses her burst with either one of these 2 weapons, so that's something to know. And then her elemental one, Snatch tries to go off a 4th time, so it makes it easier to land stacks. Her HP one, however, her attack and defense debuff is going to get an extra 10%, so it goes up from 20% to 30%, basically. In my opinion, that's a better one to have, but again, Kaspar may want the elemental one, so it's a bit conflicting on this one. And plus, if you're going to end up using any of these drop rate souls that have Snatch or whatever, you're probably going to end up using Kaspar anyway, so focus more on what Kaspar would want. But if you don't mind getting both weapons, then yeah, the HP one's probably better for D'Artagnan, because it's just going to up the debuffing. Snatch, you don't have to worry about too much, especially once that 100 MP hits. Now then, Hercules. This is one soul that I did love using before, but she kind of fell off because once the S-class hit, you don't look back at the A-class really. But can get a lot of base stats for her level ups, so there you go. And then on top of that too, her master bonus gives everybody more assault among all your souls, so there you go. You need Achilles and Rosencruz to unlock this one. This first ability can hit pretty hard if you really stack your debuffs. I mean, stack your buffs on her. And I've seen it do 7 digits of damage pretty easily, so it can one-shot basically anything that's not a raid. And even some of the weaker raids to get one-shot by this. But like the standard and expert, they can still get one-shot. But this first ability for her can do a surprising amount of damage. So yeah, if you really stack a lot of debuffs on her, it can really, really power up. Because speaking of which, she can land a lot of buffs on herself. So her self-buffing, her second ability, which you can also put on other souls, gives her more attack power, gives her more combo rate, and gives her a increased burst gauge. So she's getting some burst gauge along with more combo rate and attack power. The second one, going to up her defense, going to up her status resistance, and it's going to give her reflect, which reflect kind of acts a little bit like a damage cut, but also at the same time sends back some damage. Then she also gets a regen. So if you've been paying attention, that's like roughly about 8 buffs just off of that. Her MP ability, her 15 MP ability called Over Limit, is a very, very powerful one if you go into a long fight. It's just going to constantly keep stacking attack buffs on her and the damage limit up. It says 3 turns, but her ability just reduces all... Her passive ability reduces all the cooldowns she has by 1, naturally. So instead of stacking like roughly 3 or 4 times, it's actually going to stack 5 times. And the damage limit is like all 3 forms of damage: ability damage, burst damage, and normal attack damage. So combine that with her first 2 skills, and you can see why her second and third skill, you can see why her first skill does a lot of damage. The other 15 MP ability, don't worry about it too much. Deals damage based on current HP. It's not all that great. You're getting Over Limit or you're getting Force Boost if you're going to care about any of the MP skills. Because what Force Boost is, which is the 100 MP one, she gets damage plus, meaning just raw damage increase for 10 turns. So there you go. But it's only to herself though. But again, keep in mind that Parashurama can use this. If you really want to try to use Achilles and all that, they can use it too, but there's no point. You do want to just mainly use the S-Class and carry over some of these abilities to them. Which is also another good point too, where I have to remind people, whatever you use for the stat increases for the A-Class will carry over to S-Class. So that's something to know. So if, say, Mordred had the debuff chance increase or something like that, then you're going to see Perseus have it as well. Like something like that. But all in all, Hercules is a very good single target buffer and can do a surprising amount of damage, but she's not as crazy as Parashurama. But things can get a little bit crazier with the weapons. And my suggestion, you definitely get the elemental weapon for Hercules and Parashurama. What this will do is give a 25% defense down on enemies when you burst. That's helping out with the debuffs, and you got a very sizable amount right there. But you want that 25%, you need to max limit break. It's weaker if you don't. But the elemental weapon, it will give a well, actually, that's where the burst gauge increase is. So it will give a burst gauge increase to her indomitable ability. So that said, she's going to get even faster with her burst cycles, and it really does make her pretty fast with it too. So there's that. The HP weapon is going to increase the effect of the full break, which is her damage nuking ability. And that is going to easily make the soft cap 7 digits. So keep that in mind. But also, it's going to really increase the stacks of how much damage it does for its own multiplier, because it's like an extra 75% per buff. So it's like a 1 times multiplier, then 1.75, then 2.5, and keeps increasing each buff. You see how it gets kind of out of hand pretty quickly. But the soft cap is going to go up to 1 million. So that said, without any type of ability increasing or anything like that, you already got a 7-digit soft cap. So it'll be very easy to do 7-digit damage with her if you use a HP weapon. My suggestion though, use the elemental one. Now we're going back into souls that need the special points if they're still in the game for you. If you're playing a Japanese set, or if it's past if 6th anniversary has already happened, then of course the merge happened. But Morgan, this is where normal attacks can start getting pretty good, depending on how you use her. So keep that in mind. But her interesting thing is having debuff resistance and defense when she levels up. And when you max her level out, it will carry over a defense increase to all other souls. You need Cassiopeia and Cagliostro to unlock her. And this is where things get pretty interesting and pretty crazy really, really fast. Because, oh boy. Starting off, she gives a guaranteed triple attack to a single ally. That means there is no double attack, there is no single attack. For those 2 turns, that character is guaranteed to triple attack. That is very powerful when combined with some of this other stuff. Now, if you take that Artanian self-heal or whatever and make it a little bit weaker, that's what the second ability basically is, but she can use it on any ally, including herself. So that means that she's just going to heal somebody, give them attack and defense up. So there you go. This next one is where it starts getting pretty crazy, because that Rampage is going to go to the entire team. And Rampage is a very, very sizable buff to normal attack damage, so that said, it's going to be pretty good for this. You may even use it for other souls too. So that's something to know. But this next ability, this is where it starts getting pretty interesting. It says grant protection to a single ally. So if I remember correctly, that's going to be like a defense buff or something like that. A very powerful defense buff. So that said, it's it just makes them immune to damage. So if you have anybody that's along the quote-unquote normal attack soul line, that's what this can do. It's 15 MP. The second one is going to grant follow-up to a single ally. And what follow-up basically is extra damage that goes off after the normal attack. So if you do a double attack, you get 2 follow-ups. If you do a triple attack, you get 3 follow-ups. You can see how the damage really racks up with this. It also stacks with other sources of follow-up if they stack properly. One that definitely will is if Kamihime has a bracelet set effect. So you'll see like 2 extra hits go off just off of that per normal attack. So if they triple attack, you just see 9 hits go off. Now, this third one is going to be the one that you are absolutely want to get, because it's crazy powerful. It's a damage plus to all allies for normal attacks for 5 turns. Only can use it once per fight though. But what makes it super powerful is the fact that it is a very, very sizable amount for normal attack damage. I do believe it was like 250,000. So yes, 250,000. So if that character triple attacks, and you can force somebody to triple attack just at this point, that's an extra 750,000 damage from normal attacks, regardless of what happens, just for those 2 turns. So yeah, you can see how crazy this can get. So if you like do that for the entire team, you basically just added a few million to your normal attack damage. This is one of the most powerful 100 MP abilities. So that said, you definitely want to get this. And this is also the reason why I will suggest that you go after Paracelsus as your first S-Class soul once 6th anniversary hits and you can get this 100 MP skill, because this is going to make content a lot easier. If not Paracelsus, go after Medea, but definitely at least get Morgan. At least get Morgan come 6th anniversary. So you can do some really crazy stuff with this, and Paracelsus just makes it even more nuts. Now then, this next soul is a burst-oriented soul, and this is where burst cycles can start getting pretty good, so you definitely might want to use her. Unlike the previous ones in the same line, she ups her triple attack rate along with double attack, so she's upping her combo rate even further, along with getting some base attack power. So when she levels up, she'll start comboing a lot more. Then on top of that, she also gives HP to all souls when she's maxed out. And then on top of that too, she's got some very, very good skills, some of which you may end up using on other souls. So here's what you're going to end up doing for her first ability. It is just AoE, elemental damage on all enemies, but it increases her own burst gauge, and it's a pretty noticeable increase as well. I think it's like 30. And then her second ability, she eats up some of her burst gauge up to 50, but it also increases the burst damage, as in the multiplier for the burst damage, for all allies, for 3 turns. So if you can sacrifice that 50 and keep the cycles going, this is actually a pretty powerful buff. So there you go for that one. Then her third ability increases the combo rate of all allies. It's not that much of an increase, but it still helps. And again, combo rate can help your burst cycles because you're getting more normal attacks off, and it's like 10 burst gauge per normal attack. Unless you increase the amount you get per hit, and it's just going to get even more powerful. But her mastery abilities is where she truly shines at too. This first one is specifically because for 15 MP, her, and you probably will use this on Yorimitsu as well, 20 burst gauge to all allies. Very good. She can use it like every 6 turns. And if you combine this with her first skill, she just got the 50 MP, the 50 burst gauge she just burnt from her second skill right back. So there you go. But then her second one is a burst streak damage increase. So when you do 2 to 5 bursts on the same turn, you get a burst streak, and the more you do in the same turn, the more powerful the burst streak is. This will up its damage multiplier, but it won't up the soft cap. Decent if you're not hitting soft caps for burst and all that, but it's completely overshined by the first one. And even if you're not using the first MP skill, which gives you the burst gauge, you're using this third one, which is 100 MP, where all allies have a flat damage plus on their bursts for 3 turns. It's not 5 turns like the other two, but it is still very, very powerful. And looking at the data from here, it is 1.5 million for everybody's burst. 1.5 million for everybody's burst, just added to there. For retrospect, generally, if you get your exceed weapons up to snuff, you will have 2 million burst soft caps, but even without it, it's 1 million. And this is giving a very sizable increase in burst damage to that. So, yeah. You're getting over double damage if you're hitting the 1 million caps, and you're getting almost double damage if you're hitting the 2 million. So you can already see how powerful this is if you can keep bursting in them in those 3 turns. So yeah, that's very, very strong. And it is another one of the strongest 100 MP mastery abilities, so you definitely want to try and get it. Now for the weapons, this is where things get a little bit crazier. If you can get her weapon to max limit break, it doesn't matter if it's the elemental or the HP one, when she bursts, she's getting 30 burst gauge. So she used up 100 but gets 30 right back. She's already refunded some of her burst gauge. This is what can really keep up her burst cycles. Then on top of that too, her first ability gets an extra effectiveness increase. So it's going to be like 35 burst gauge. I guess it was 20 without it, but it's going to be like 35 burst gauge for her first ability. Now the HP one is going to be helpful towards her second ability, which would change it from like a 200% multiplier to a 500%, which I think is the most you can get from Exceed. So the HP one also got some good notoriety too, but you're probably going to want the elemental one, not just because it seems better for Shingen, but also it's going to be better for Yorimitsu. So elemental one's definitely the way to go. But there is a bit of an argument for the HP one. It just depends on the setup, but it's way easier to use the elemental one. So that said, you probably want to go for the elemental one. In fact, when in doubt, go for the elemental soul weapon. I say that because now we're getting into the S class, and this is where things get really, really interesting. So, S class. First and foremost, I have to take some time to explain this. These souls cannot be unlocked until at least rank 100. If it's 6th anniversary, it's rank 90 when you can unlock them. And they need materials from a lot of different stuff in order to unlock them. Raids, normal content like the caves where you get the fangs and all that type of stuff. Mats from storyline. They need Idoan orbs, I do remember. They need a lot of different stuff. So it is going to take some time to unlock these souls, but they are indeed the most powerful souls in the game. And they are very, very much worth it. Second, When you unlock an S-Class soul, if you had to use an A-Class soul weapon, because 10 of them will do it, the other 5 won't, then it will sacrifice that weapon, but give you a new one in return, which is more powerful. So the elemental increase is going to jump from 30% to 40%. Same thing for the HP increase. And those weapons are acting like they can final break. Now, also, those weapons will buff up the abilities of these S-Class souls, so that's something to know when you try to use those weapons. You don't have to use a soul weapon, and some of them probably are better without it, but it's an option for you. Now, the last thing I need to mention too is the fact that the specifics of each S-Class is still dependent on, like, what you already previously unlocked. Like, the first 10 need a specific A-Class, the last 5 need specific S-Class. So there you go for that one. I will mention who needs what, and give you a general rundown of all the, like, not the materials you need, but the rank you need in order to get all the materials, but that's something to know. But starting off with Charlemagne, and if you ask me, she's not all that good, but she can be pretty powerful when used right. But come 6th anniversary, she gets a buff that really helps her out, and then on top of that too, has some very good strategies that you can pull off. Then on top of that too, tends to be the S-Class soul that a lot of people unlock just from looks alone, but her abilities are so-so. But an interesting thing with the first 10 S-Class abilities is the fact that you can swap around their second and third skills. Only between three different kinds, but there you go. But she's really going to up her base attack. When she's max level, she's going to give everybody some more attack power. You need Arthur and the specific 5 steps to unlock this soul. So you're going to need rank 90, rank 100 if it's not 6th anniversary. So just be rank 100 just to be safe. But her first ability, which cannot change period point blank, ups her burst performance, which is going to just up her burst damage, and it gives her a burst gauge fill up. So it's like Arthur's version, but with an extra buff. And it's pretty strong too. But the burst performance is only 1 turn, so you have to use it then. Now, her second ability is, you can select between these 3 skills I'm about to go through. Either a defense down to 1 enemy, which is 30% while dealing damage. She will deal damage to an enemy, but also up her special attack, which can stack. And that's another multiplier. Or, she can deal damage to an enemy, but guarantee a triple attack as well for herself for a buff. So you can pick one of those 3. Personally, I can see cases for all 3 of them getting used, but it's usually the first one that gets used. The debuffing. If you don't need the debuffing, it's probably the triple attack that will get used next. Now, those 3 all unlock at level 5, so just pick between any of those 3 which one you want to use. Level 15, generally you're going to get one of these 3 abilities for that slot, so just take your pick for that one. Everybody's attack up goes up. I do believe it's 40%. And that's not just your whole team, it's the entire raid that gets that attack buff. Or you can up the attack, you can give an attack buff to the entire team, your team, but also increase their damage limits. Or you can give a stinger buff to your team. I do believe it's just your team, not the entire participants. So you can take your pick between any of those. But she also has the same EX abilities as Arthur, if you've seen the first video. But just to recap on those, the first one, 15 MP, Stinger buff. Second one, 15 MP, it's a Vigor buff. Third one, 100 MP, guaranteed critical for your team. The specifics for all of that is on Arthur's video. But just as a quick little suggestion, definitely get that 100 MP one if you're doing any of those. Now, going into the weapons, when she bursts, everybody on your team gets a combo, elemental attack buff, from what it says. So, that said, it's going to up their damage, of course, but it's also going to up their debuff chances. So that's something to know. If you use her elemental weapon, which you probably should, then her first ability is just going to get an increase in the effectiveness of her burst performance. So that first one that gives her the that first one that's going to up her burst performance is going to be even more stupid now. Like, she gets a permanent burst performance increase, and then you can buff it further with the first ability. So that's what that is, basically. It's like a permanent effect, but her first ability can stack on top of this. Now, the HP weapon, the effect of her moral encouragement is getting like a 10% increase, so it's like an assault buff. But, be quite honest, you don't really want the HP one. So that's something to know. Because moral encouragement is her passive assist ability, so it just goes up to I think 15%. It's like an assault buff basically, but you kind of don't want it. You want the elemental one if you're going to do it, because everybody's just going to get more elemental attack, and then on top of that too, she's going to up her own damage limits. So Charlemagne's definitely the one to go for. Romulus, like elemental for Charlemagne's the one to go for. Now Romulus, very very good defensive soul. I love using her. And there's some very interesting specific strategy for her, but just know that she is a tank. She is a massive, massive tank. And I honestly have to say, you are really screwing up if you do not get the defense increases from her stat increase from mastery. Like, if you're not spending points to up the defense to max, you're doing it wrong. But speaking of which, when she levels up, she gets natural defense increase, and then on top of that, she can give a master bonus of more defense. So she's got like roughly 35% defense just off of that, and some more HP. She naturally increases her own defense as well, and then she gets more defense from all this other type of stuff. She is just a tank. And done correctly, she can naturally reduce damage by well over half. So yeah. Speaking of reducing damage, her first ability, 60% damage reduction. Just be careful with this in malicious raids, because it's 30% there. Malicious raids have this mechanic where damage cuts is half effective. But it's still very, very powerful, regardless of what raid you're in, what fight you're in. So if you're about to get nuked, definitely use this. Level 5 abilities, which go in the second slot, she gets a better regen and double attack increase compared to John. So keep that in mind. Or she can, and I like using the third one, but the second one, she can draw more attention to herself and give herself a better regen, along with a decent defense increase. So there you go with that one. But it's 5 turns compared to the 2 turns that you might get from the next one. But the next one's still way better because her defense increase is so absurd. It like gives her like plus 96% defense, I do believe. And she's guaranteed to take out a single target in random hits. So if it's not a team-wide hit, otherwise AoE, then she's just going to take all that damage. And with a super high defense spike on that, she's going to take a lot less damage. So if you're going to use any of these abilities for her second slot, it's definitely going to be that protection one that lasts like 2 turns. Now, her third slot abilities, which unlock at level 15 for her, you get an A-frame attack down for 30%. Very useful. Or she can counter attack on enemies whenever she gets smacked. What that means is that if you combine it with the protect thing, she can draw attacks to her, take those hits, then send some damage right back to the enemies. Very good to use together. Now, the third one in this is also viable for being used, and that's reducing an orb from one enemy, and it's guaranteed to remove that one orb. My suggestion is to take whatever works best for you, because all 3 of them are very, very good. So your third slot is very, very flexible. It's good. Now, reminder that the EX abilities come from John. So, first one ally can remove all the damage. One ally can just ignore all the damage they take for that one turn, that one time. Combine that with her cover, and she's just not taking damage, period, point blank. The second one stacks defense up. Pretty useful if you have a long-term fight and can keep it going. Third one, massive defense spike for everybody in a fight, but you can only use it once per fight. So it's like your entire team's just going to get a massive defense spike. But personally, I wouldn't even worry about that. This is one of the few times where I'd argue that you don't go after the 100 MP. So there you go. But her weapons. Now, when she bursts, she's going to give herself a damage cut. Only it's going to work for 3 turns, I do believe, this time around. And her elemental weapon, her damage cut has 1 turn cooldown removed permanently. Her HP weapon, though, she has a permanent damage cut of 20%. This is where you can argue that either weapon's good, but my personal opinion, go for the HP one, because it gives you way more survivability. You use Romulus in order to try and cover for the team, and also try to reduce the damage they take. She gets permanent damage reduction, so she's just not going to get smacked as hard. And you got more health in order to withstand damage. So, my personal opinion, go for the HP one. If you're picking Romulus, you're already going defensive anyway. But you can argue that the elemental one's also pretty good too, because our damage cut is still raid wide and it comes back faster. And elemental attack is just going to up your damage output for the entire team too, so. But there's other sources of it as well, if you want to be honest. But either one works. Some would argue to go for elemental. I would argue to go for the HP one, actually. Because that's what I did, and I have like a team that got like 40,000 HP, and just whenever she's on it, she's just good luck killing her. But it's up to you on that one. Now then, Esculapius. I have to point out that there is some changes with her. So 6th anniversary is when she's going to get even more powerful. But starting off, healer. I don't need to say much more about that. She's just going to get better healing as she levels up and all that. This first ability and one of her second abilities have been changed since 6th anniversary. They are weaker right now, but when 6th anniversary hits, it'll be the same exact info. The first ability is 2,000 HP. 6th anniversary makes it 3,000 HP that she recovers for the entire raid. So it will be 6,000 total if you max out the Ascension, until 6th anniversary when it just becomes 9,000 total. Very strong, and a lot of higher tier raids like using Andromeda, so or Esculapius if they don't have Andromeda. So I mean they like using Esculapius and then Andromeda if they don't have Esculapius. But anyways, very strong healing, and they just buff it even further on 6th anniversary. That's her first skill. You're never going to be able to remove that offering. Why would you? But second ability is dependent on what you really want. So you can give a pretty sizable defense up, I think it's like 40% to the entire raid. Or you can take 1 buff off of all enemies, also pretty useful depending on the fight. Or you can make a single ally recover. I do believe it was 4,000 normally. Now it's 5,000 after 6th anniversary. So that's 15,000 with max ascension and after 6th anniversary to 1 single ally. That's a lot of HP. But given how high HP can get later on, you see why they had to buff it a little bit. But that's all her level 5 stuff. Pick whichever one works best for you, but good chance you're probably going to use one of the later two. Now, third ability. Level 15 unlocks all this stuff. She gets that revive that Andromeda has, but it's like 3 turns faster between cooldowns. Or she can put an automatic revive on an ally and herself. Very, very useful. If you're going to go the route for revivals, you're probably going to take that second skill over the first one. Even though this first one can go off like 3 times by the time the second one goes off twice. But the third one, if you don't use revival stuff, you're going to end up using this. It generates a potion, and potions heal based off of a percentage of your max HP, regardless of ascension, regardless of how much health you have. And potions heal a lot too. I think it's like 65% of your health, if I remember correctly. It was something pretty high like that. So she could just keep making potions throughout the fight. So if you want more items in battle that heal yourself, this is the way to go. And there's other characters that can do it too. They can just stack and start making a whole bunch of these. But my suggestion, you're either going to go for the automatic revival because it covers 2 characters at once, or you're going to make potions. So that's my suggestion for the third slot. Fourth slot, however, is depending on whatever you need, but reminder that the EX skills from Andromeda will carry over to her. So you got a nullification of a debuff one time for the entire team. Useful for some fights, but if you're not using that, you're probably using the third one, where it's just an automatic revive for everybody. That won't go away until they use it. And then on top of that, the second one's Indomitable, meaning that somebody will just stay at 1 HP until the turns are up or this thing gets used. So they'll never die until that Indomitable goes away. Now, the assist ability I also have to point out too, because she has a self-regen, so she's just going to keep healing her HP back. But the first one is going to give a HP increase to everyone on your team, so consider it a free defender. That's a lesser known thing that people don't really pay attention to. So consider it a free defender. But her weapons, she's going to buff her recovery limit some more Ascension whenever she bursts, so there's that. Now, this is where most people will go the elemental weapon, because when you use her raid-wide heal, it will also remove a debuff. Combine that with something like, say, Maiden's Prayer, and you're removing 2 debuffs off the raid while healing a lot of HP per Esculapius in the raid. So for stuff like the Dark Malicious and all that, it's very valuable. But the HP one adds a regen to that raid-wide heal as well, so there's a slight bit of argument for that one too. But if you need more healing, there's just other ways around that. So I'd suggest you go to elemental one and take the debuff removal, because that really helps you out in some fights. Like, some of it's lifesavers. Alright, so the next one is Medea, and arguably my favorite of the souls. Like, appearance-wise. But utility-wise, I can't necessarily say she's my favorite, like, actual uses, but she's one of my favorites. But ups her ability damage, ups her natural attack power. You need Solomon, and then still the same old with the S-Class souls. You need a high enough rank in order to get all the mats. Still rank 100, just to be safe. But, her thing is ability damage, and she's very good at it. So, let's go over all this. First off, her first ability. 10 times ability damage multiplier to a single enemy. Keep that in mind for a later weapon. But this hits hard. Easily 7-digit damage. Easily. Second ability. If you remember Solomon's Ring, where she uses all 6 elements, well, it's forced to be AoE. So every enemy gets hit with fire, then every enemy gets hit with water, then every enemy hit with thunder, and so on and so forth. A pretty underrated AoE killer, but I would only suggest using this if you don't have one of her specific weapons. But that's only for certain content, because her other second ability, which is also pretty useful, is to do an elemental resistance debuff based on the weapon she uses. So if she's got a fire weapon on, she's going to do a fire elemental resistance. So wind enemies is going to get smacked even harder, basically. But keep in mind that elemental buffs and debuffs will affect the debuff rates and the damage. So that's something to know. So you're going to be able to debuff more with that one. Now, the third ability is where you're probably going to use it most, if not all the time. Without affecting the cooldown of her first ability, it's just going to make her first ability go off 3 times. You can only use it once per fight. And you can only use it 5 turns after the start of the fight. But it's going to triple cast that first ability. So done correctly, you can do that first ability 4 times in 1 turn. It can get a little bit crazier later on, but that's the gist of that. Now, when she's level 15, she gets these abilities to put in her third slot, so you can up the ability performance of all allies. Sometimes I use this as the fight's short, but generally you probably won't use this. But some strategies I've used on the Japanese side have made her deal like up to 3 million per cast of that first ability. So, again, it all depends on how you can pull stuff off, but good chance you probably won't use this because the other two definitely are better. So the second one, an enemy gets their elemental attack reduced based on the weapon she uses, and that's again going to really help out for some raids and all that too, depending on the fight or whatever. It deals a decent amount of damage too, those debuffs as well, so there's that. But again, same example, if she has a fire weapon, a wind enemy is going to have their attack reduced. So there you go. Now this is where you really have to pay attention to the weapons too, because if you take that same fire Medea into a thunder raid, it's not going to do anything for the elemental attack debuff, so that's a wasted slot outside the extra damage. Now this next one is going to be the one that you're probably going to use most of the time, and it will reduce the cooldown of your entire team. Like all the abilities on your team, their cooldowns are reduced by 1 turn. Very, very potent, especially when combined with something else that happens in the mastery abilities. Because again, Solomon's mastery abilities can carry over to Medea. You're not going to use the ability performance one because that's the same one as their third slot, so forget it. And it's got a longer cooldown. The second one, though, Hour of the Overlord, which is the other 15 MP one, takes all of Medea's abilities off of cooldown, no matter how long they were. So that's where you can start getting some really crazy stuff. That first ability, use it 5 times in 1 turn. That one ability where everybody's cooldowns get reduced by one turn, you can do it twice in a row. Have at it. Hour of the Overlord's very, very powerful. But this next one, Grace of Wisdom, is probably one that you're not going to use unless you have like a crap ton of a multi-hit characters on the team for ability damage. But it's like 100,000 damage for every ability hit. And I didn't go over it in the previous video because I wanted to wait for this. But what that means is that like Medea's own 10 times nuke is only going to get like 100,000 damage at it because it only hits once. But somebody that hits like 8 times is getting like 800,000 damage because each hit's getting plus 100,000. So that's where that would have some use if you have multi-hit. Otherwise, it's really horrible. So that said, good chance you're using Hour of the Overlord actually. So keep that in mind. And another interesting little thing for Medea, each time her first skill goes off, the ability damage limit at all allies just goes up. Permanent for the whole fight, it stacks up to 5 times. So the more she casts that first skill, the more damage everybody's just going to start doing with abilities, including herself. So yeah, you can kind of see why I can get like 3 million hits of that first ability if I really wanted to. But that's on the Japanese side though. The global side hasn't really gotten the buffs in order to really do that yet, but you can still get like 2 million. But going into the weapons, I'm going to cover the HP weapon first because it really it ain't all that useful. But it says that the usage interval of her first ability will be there's a chance that it'll get shortened. Don't gamble on that chance because it's not as good as you would think it is. The real meat of her weapons is the first one. And by the way, if she bursts with either weapon, her abilities come back 1 turn faster. So yeah, that's even more usage. But the real meat of her utilities from this first weapon, the elemental one, where that first ability is AoE. So imagine, because I gotta use it again for an example, imagine that 3 million damage hit that I do on Japanese side with her. Imagine that being AoE. And imagine that being 5 times in a row. Yeah, I just smacked every enemy in the raid for 15 million each. Because some raids have multiple enemies. Yeah, you see how crazy that is. If you're going to use Medea, you really want to try and get your hands on that elemental weapon. If you don't, then maybe you can get around it, depending on the fight. If it's single target, you don't have to worry about it at all. But still, she's way more powerful with that elemental attack weapon. So definitely try to aim for that. I would say she's near reliant on it. But Hector. Oh boy, Hector. Now, personally, I haven't unlocked her on any account yet, so there's that. But I've seen some of the crazy stuff people have done with her. Hector is arguably one of the souls that can deal the most damage in 1 turn. I'm not kidding. But anyways, mode gauge reduction she's good at. she can also get more natural raw attack power as well. You need Siegfried in order to unlock her, so there you go. The first one significantly increases her status. She just buffs the crap out of herself and has very, very large buffs. So there you go. Excuse me. Her second ability slot, you unlock all 3 of these at level 5. Pick your favorite. But raises the damage and the damage limit for all allies when the enemies are in raging or stun. So you can use it when they're in raging and nuke them again when they're in stun. This is probably the one that people will use on their second slot. But she can also increase the mode gauge reduction and damage limit for all allies. If not for the damage limit, that's basically meh. And then the third ability is a guaranteed stinger for everybody. So if you're not using the first one of these 3, which is the raging and stun punish, you're probably using the guaranteed stinger. So there you go. Third abilities that she unlocks at level 15. She can either do a significant amount of damage to stunned enemies while keeping them stunned. Pretty good finishing nuke for some of the easier content, but you probably aren't going to use it. She can reduce everybody's mode gauges while increasing everybody's burst gauges. Very, very potent. And this is the one that I suggest you use for her third slot. Or she can just instantly launch a normal attack. If you got some good buffs and all that other type of stuff, then maybe instantly launching a normal attack is useful. But you're probably going to use that mode gauge and that burst gauge because enemies could get a direct rage drain while you're getting a direct burst gauge increase. And you also get more burst gauge increase as you deal your normal attacks. So I think it was like 30% or something like that. So yeah, very, very potent for that third slot. So definitely use that. And then on top of that too, the mastery abilities, she can trigger a double attack for sure. So combined with that launch a normal attack, she can combo quite a bit for that. But I suggest you don't really use that mastery. Damage limit for allies, you can ignore that one too, basically, because she got other sources of increasing damage limit. The 100 MP one, though, is the one that's really crazy, because imagine that raging stun punish, and she can just do it another 5 times, basically. The whole team could. Yeah, that's insane. But for a good amount of explanation, though, some players on the Japanese side have managed to get billions of damage in guild competition with her. Some have managed to do 1 billion damage in one attack in one of the in a union event. So there is some insane potential. Now you do have to wail pretty hard for all that type of stuff because yeah, but I've seen some really crazy damage numbers from Hector. It's like you just really try to beef up for enemies. Whenever they're in raging or stun, you just nuke the ever-living crap out of them. You go way past the soft caps. And I mean way past the soft caps. When you're doing normal attack damage at 8 digits, that is like so far past the soft caps, it makes no sense. So, yeah. Hector, if you really know what you're doing in the game, she's one you definitely want to have, because she will help you deal a crap ton of damage in one turn. Arguably enough to make her one of the best damage dealing souls in the game, if not the best. So she still holds up very, very, very well. But her weapons aren't that great, unfortunately. She does deal additional damage based on the enemy state, so she's just going to deal extra damage regardless whenever she bursts. It's best done when the enemy's, I think, stunned, but you're still going to want to have it raging for that one. Because raging is where a bulk of her stuff can go. But, you want the elemental weapon, if anything, because it'll give everybody a guaranteed combo attack whenever an enemy's stunned. So that's something to know. The other one is going to give her a follow-up on everything that happens whenever it's, like all the normal attacks and all that, whenever an enemy's raging. So the HP weapon, useful, but not as useful as the elemental one, and either one's not all that great. So go for the elemental one. But most people use her without either weapon. So she's not weapon reliant because the weapons aren't all that great. Now, Perseus, very good soul to use. She's another one I honestly haven't unlocked on either Japanese set or global set, but I know she does a lot of very good stuff, especially on the later floors of the tower. If you're struggling on floors 21 plus, or even some of the raids like the fire militias, she's gonna really help you out. But damage to debuff enemies, she'll deal more of that as she levels up, and then get natural attack power increases. Max her level, all your souls are more resistant to debuffs. Her main thing is debuffs, 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 nothing but debuffs. And they are all pretty powerful. First off, her first ability, she does a stronger version of the poison, the burn, the drown, the putrefy, the blind. It's all way more powerful. So that said, it's going to really, really lay on some damage over time. And then on top of that, it's also going to debuff pretty much the accuracy of enemies about a lot. You use this in fire militias, you're not going to get hit a lot of the time. Trust me on that one. Then on top of that, too, second abilities at level 5, you can have a better version of Vicissitudes of Fortune, basically, where you increase your debuff rate and decrease the enemy's debuff resistance. But second one, you can also debuff the status rate of enemies, so their debuff rates have just been lowered. And you can give yourself a debuff protection, like one debuff just won't land for all allies. So that's what the second ability is for that one as well. The third ability for slot 2 extends the effects of the debuffs on the enemies. So whatever debuffs were landed, they're just going to stay there longer. Yeah, that's powerful. But it extends the turn, so if it's debuffs on a timer, it's not going to really help. But third one is depending on what you really want. Now, you can either increase the maximum orb count for enemies, so they need one more extra charge. Or you can, I do believe this is the ability where if she lands it, it prevents a charge from happening on enemies. The second one. And then the third one is the super powerful blind. So there you go for that one. And people have nicknamed it Shade. So there you go. So that said, she can really debuff quite well. And then, again, going over the master abilities, she can remove one orb off an enemy, or she can deal damage based on the debuffs, or she can basically just guarantee a 50% attack and defense down. So take your pick from any of those EX abilities if you're using them, but there's others that you can probably use, so you may not need them. And then on top of that too, when debuffs are on enemies, then she can basically increase her combo rate. And then on top of that too, when she hits a normal attack, enemies' attack and defense down goes down naturally anyway. So that makes even less of a reason to actually have that assist ability. So there you go. But yes, she is very good at debuffs. She is extraordinarily good with controlling the enemy's charge turns. So yeah, she can basically just demolish some fights if you can keep enemies from doing their strongest attacks. Then on top of that too, her weapons, either one is going to remove one buff off of enemies. But she can either, with the elemental weapon, make her first ability have 5 turns cooldown, and since it has 5 turns duration, it's basically got permanent uptime. So you won't need immunity killer, which will extend the stuff. But the HP weapon, it's going to increase the debuff chances. So yeah, I wouldn't really care too much about the HP weapon. You're more or less going to want to go for the elemental one if you're going to use Perseus's weapons, because you're going to have just basically full uptime on that first ability. Means you won't need immunity killer, and you can just go for the debuff rate or any of the other stuff you want for that second slot. So that will really help out. Now then, Kaspar. Drop rate soul, but with a twist. She's honestly the jack of all trades soul, so honestly, if you are unsure about what soul to really unlock, it's never a wrong choice with Kaspar because she can play so many different roles that she'll fit in basically any team. So, always go for Kaspar if you really are at a loss of what to do. You need D'Artagnan for her, and of course D'Artagnan's weapons, but here's where things get pretty interesting with her. First off, first ability, damage and drop rate to everybody. If you've seen Snatch EX from D'Artagnan, that's basically what this first ability is, only it's a stronger damage nuke. It's like, I think, 500,000 soft cap or something like that. So, you can easily start doing a decent amount of damage while up in the drop rate with enemies, so she can frequently cast it too. But you'll see how. Starting with her second slot abilities, she can either give a recovery, an attack, and defense up. But the thing with this is the fact that if there are 6 stacks of Snatch, it will affect the whole team instead of just herself. So she can play a healer role with a little bit of buffing. And that defense buff is pretty sizable too. I think it was like 50%. But she also has a better buff where the second ability that you can put in second slot, nicknamed the Aussie buff by some people, it will give an attack buff, a defense buff, a double attack buff, a triple attack buff, and a stinger buff. Based on the number of snatches on an enemy, will determine how long it lasts, up to 5 turns, which is almost full uptime. It is a very, very powerful buff. If you are not using her first ability for the second slot, you're using the second one. You will be using the 2B as they call it. And then her third one for the second slot, she can use that first ability without taking it off a cooldown, but it eats up 10 of her burst gauge. So don't expect to burst too often if you keep spamming this one, but it can lead to some interesting little strategies if you use this one. If you want to make her damage dealing through ability damage, then you're probably going to use this one. Otherwise, good chance you're using the second one, if not the first. Now for third slot, level 15, when it opens up, that sniper shot is basically a 30% version. That's what this magic bullet does. So, that said, you're going to have some very, very good debuffing with her. Her second ability is a turn-based one, and it's only to yourself. Any turn-based debuffs is only to the player, not to the whole raid. But it will deal a fixed damage to the enemy, which is 250,000, but also give a defense down on an enemy. The defense down lasts 10 turns. The cooldown of this ability is determined by how many snatch stacks is on the enemy. So, for each snatch stack, the cooldown is reduced by 1. You can use it up to 10 times in that time period. And I do believe it's a 5% defense down, so she can hit 50% on her own, just off of that. The third one, think of what the third ability for her second slot does, only it eats up 5% of her HP instead of 10 burst gauge. So, if you've been following this, she can triple cast her first ability, when done right. So, there you go with that one. So that's what I mean by the ability damage thing. It's like she can triple cast and do some pretty nice AoE damage if you set her up properly. Now, that said, with how she works just off of all of that, she can help with normal attacks, she can help with some buffing, some debuffing, she can heal, she can do drop rate, she can do ability damage. She indirectly helps burst and she can help combo rate with the 1 buff. So, you see why I called her a jack of all trades. So there's that. As for the EX abilities that are specific to her soul line, Snatch EX, I don't need to say much about that. It's like her first ability, only a little bit weaker on the damage. But it's basically the same stuff, like 3 stacks of Snatch, and there you go. But, second ability, she can deal a lot of damage to one enemy based on the level of Snatch. The only time I can see somebody using this is in specific fights for maybe Tower or Jewel Hunt. I can't see anybody really using that. So, you can pretty much ignore that one. There's usually other abilities that she can do too. I mean, if you do her magic bullet with something like ambush, she's already got 50% defense down, along with 30% attack down. So you see what I'm getting at with stuff like that. But third ability is probably the one you're going to use if you use any of these EX abilities. It just 15 stacks of snatch on every single enemy, but since it only goes up to 9, you're probably guaranteed to max it out, which will in turn make her 2A, 2B, and 3B abilities full power out the gate. So the stackable defense down automatically gets a 1-turn cooldown. Her super buff that she puts on the team, automatically 5 turns duration. Her AoE heal, well, her single target heal and buff, AoE. So if you're going to use Kaspar, you're probably going to use this third ability where it takes 100 MP. Otherwise, you're going to use Snatch EX, or you're going to end up using something else. So there you go for that one. And the interesting thing is, her combo rate and her special attack goes up whenever there's more stacks of Snatch. So if you start seeing a pretty good damage spike, that's probably why. But her weapons aren't all that great. So first off, they will give her combo rate whenever she bursts. So it is helping that out at least. But the HP one is just going to increase the success rate of Snatch landing. Don't even bother. Like, don't even bother. But her elemental weapon, it's going to reduce the cooldown of Snatch. So she'll start using her abilities a little bit faster. That's what makes this one arguably better. Excuse me. Because when you use this weapon, Snatch will start getting landed a lot more often. Just off of that naturally. She'll deal more damage. You have more elemental attack. Use her elemental weapon if you're going to use either one. But she's usable without it. Now then, Parashurama, a lot of people like using her. But that was after she got her first set of buffing. I do believe there's another set of buffs that she gets on 6th anniversary. But she was basically single target with a lot of her stuff, but she can spread it to her allies now. So, that's something to know. But, the EX abilities are still self. But, going over her kit. First ability, nukes based on the amount of buff she has. It's like Hercules, but only way more powerful. It's like, I think, easily double the damage Hercules could probably do. So, there you go. First ability for her second slot, which is the level 5 stuff. She can buff her own attack power, normal attack performance, and give herself a follow-up. So if you're doing a normal attack team, this is pretty good. The second one is a burst-oriented one. But what makes this interesting is the fact that she fills up her own burst gauge, and if it goes over the top, so it's like she has 100 bursts, then it's just going to share it to her allies. But she also stacks her own burst performance up. So that's a good one to have. The third one, she starts stacking special attack, which is a multiplier you don't really get that much, but she also draws attention to herself. Unless you want her to take the hits, that's a detriment, not a boost. So be careful with that one. Now, level 15 abilities. The first one, very strong defense up, very strong vigor buff. She gives herself a defensive wall, which is a barrier. And she gives herself regen. So she'll help keep herself alive. Now, the second ability gives herself a damage cut. Gives herself counterattack. And this isn't the counterattack where it's like she gets smacked and she attacks back. It's a counterattack as in as her HP drops, her attack power increases. She gives herself patience. Which I do believe is the defense buff where as her HP drops, her defense goes even higher. And then she gives herself fortitude, meaning she's just not going to die. She'll stay at 1 HP as long as that fortitude is active. Then the third ability that she can put in this slot is a stackable attack up and defense up. And keep in mind, she can use it like every 3 turns because of her assist ability. But if her HP is at maximum, she's going to heal everybody else. So if she's got full HP, she's going to heal others. So this can make it a pretty frequent heal to keep people alive. So if you're using her 2B and her 3C, that's going to help out your allies as well as herself. So keep that in mind. And a lot of people like using her that way as well. But EX abilities, stackable attack and damage limit for the over limit. That's a very good one to have if you don't use any of the other stuff. Because the second one, damage based on current HP, not all that great. And then the third one, where it takes 100 MP, damage plus, but it's once per fight and only for 10 turns. Generally, only if you want to make her a walking nuke. But even then, there's better ways to go about that stuff, so I wouldn't really worry about it too much. But, interesting little things that you need to pay attention to with her. She gives herself a very good combo rate increase from her passive, and then her status element resistance is very, very high. Good luck seeing her debuffed until the malicious raids. Then on top of that too, she reduces all abilities cooldown by 1. So yeah, all those cooldown timers that's right here, the 6, the 7, and all that, they all get reduced by 1 just from her passive. So yeah, there you go. But also, interesting thing with her weapon too is the fact that just like Hercules, it's going to debuff enemies when she bursts. So either one of those, and it's a 30%, not a 25% this time. But HP weapon, it's going to increase her healing and power. So if you really want to make her 3C stronger without getting more essential weapons, that's something to do. But I wouldn't really worry about it too much. But the elemental one's the way to go, because it's going to give her a permanent stinger, along with giving everybody more elemental attack. So I would definitely go for the elemental weapon. And now then, Paracelsus. If you're doing normal attacks, this is a soul to go for. So any of those technical weapons and all that, she's going to help you use them a lot better. But anyways, debuff resistance and defense as she levels up with some natural HP. Gives all the souls more defense when she's max level. You need Morgan in order to unlock her. If you don't have 6th anniversary already, you need the blue soul points to unlock her. So there you go. But she is very, very strong. Now, first off, going on to the first ability, she starts stacking combo rate increase for all allies. And with how combo rates work, when you start stacking this, you'll eventually start getting guaranteed combos. So keep that in mind. You'll stop seeing single attacks. Unless like a character just naturally does single attacks regardless because of some passive or effect or something. But second ability gives everybody rampage and ups the damage limit. Very, very strong one. So your normal attack damage is going to spike like a madman when you use this ability. The second one you can put in the second slot gives everybody vigor, gives everybody a barrier, and still increases your damage limit. So this is a good backup if you're not using a rampage. The third one is more for survivability, but it costs HP from everybody. So if you don't have 15% of HP on a single ally, then you're going to not be able to use this. But takes 15% HP off of everybody, ups the damage limit, gives them all indomitable, meaning that no one is going to die as long as everyone has that indomitable. If the person doesn't have it, they're just going to die anyway. And they get counterattack, meaning that they deal more damage as their HP drops. So there you go for that one. If you're going with a rebellion setup, this could arguably be good, so keep that in mind. Now, third slot's where things can get pretty, like, dependent on whatever you're facing or how you want to set things up. But the best one damage-wise is easily going to be the first one, where at the cost of 20% HP from everybody, so if anybody's below 20%, you can't do it. Everybody's going to do a normal attack. And that's without using up the turn. So you're just going to see everybody just launch their normal attacks, and you can continue on with whatever. Combined with that rampage one for the second slot, can deal a lot of damage in one turn. It really can. The second ability gives a follow-up attack, so any normal attacks that land get an extra hit added to it. So triple attack, 3 extra hits, so on and so forth. This next one is the first time you see it on a soul. And it is a spread effect to all allies. What that means is that whenever they do one normal attack, it's going to hit every enemy on the field at once. So instead of hitting one enemy, you hit 3. This is pretty good for some raids. If a raid has multiple enemies, if a normal fight has multiple enemies, this is a good one to have. especially when combined with the 100 MP ability. So you can start seeing a lot of damages go way off. But generally it's all dependent on what you're doing. I tend not to use a follow-up one unless I just don't want to eat up my HP. So you'll end up using the spread one or the guaranteed normal without eating up your turn, the one that uses the HP. But going into the EX abilities, the damage immunity for one ally, situational, kind of decent out, I guess. The other one's a follow-up to one ally, but if you're doing follow-up, you're going to give it to everybody, so don't even worry about that one. And the third one is the one you're probably going to use anyway once 6th anniversary hits, where everybody just gets a flat 250 damage added to every single normal attack they land for 5 turns. So that's extraordinarily powerful. When combined with stuff like the spread, the rampage, and all that stuff, it gets crazy fast. It is stupidly overpowered. Some people question why it's even in the game, but it is very, very strong. That's definitely the one to aim for. I'm saving up 100 MP for that. But interestingly enough, too, I need to mention is her assist abilities, where if she has a staff weapon, doesn't matter which one it is, everybody's defense goes up. If she has an arcane weapon, everybody has a permanent regen. And she's unaffected by rampage, so if any enemy tries to rampage her, or if she does it to herself, because if an enemy does rampage, you don't get the normal attack buff. It's just, well, I believe you don't get the normal attack buff. It just seals off your bursts and abilities. But with her, she's unaffected by the rampage disabling her abilities. It still will prevent her from bursting, but if she's under rampage, she can still use all this other stuff as long as it's off cooldown. So there you go. But the weapons, I forgot what the enchantment is. I think that's the I forgot what it is actually. I think it was Vigor or something like that. I can click on this and see, because I never really use her weapons all that much, so that's why. Oh, it's Charm. It's Dizzy. So when she bursts, she can dizzy enemies, I guess. Maybe if it lands and works, it helps, but later fights don't do it. But the elemental weapon, whenever she combos, she has a chance to reduce the cooldown to whatever's in her second and third ability slots. So that can be pretty helpful. There's still a chance it will happen, but that can be pretty helpful. And if you go for the HP weapon, then the regen just got stronger. And ironically, the HP weapon's an arcane one, go figure. But basically the regen just got stronger. But if you're going to use her weapons, I would easily go for the elemental one. And now, they say Raiko for the translations, but that's really Yorimitsu. Because there's already a Raiko in the game, and it was confusing as hell when they had 2 of them. So yeah, I'm glad they changed that and made it Yorimitsu. But you need Shingen to unlock her. This is the last of the S-Class souls, because all the ones I covered so far all need rank 100. They'll need rank 90 when 6th anniversary hits, but they all need rank 100 as of right now for global. You need a blue soul points to unlock this one as well. And she's like burstery in it as well, but she's nuts with bursts. I can do 4 full bursts in a row with her on a specific light team. That's how crazy it can get. But anyways, when she's leveling up, more double attack and triple attack chance. She gets more natural attack power in her base stats. Then on top of that too, when she's max level, all souls get an HP increase. So there you go. Now, first ability is the one that she can't remove. It's just going to be an AoE damage, and then she summons a ghost. AoE damage is nice, but the ghost is what fuels most of her kit. So yeah, definitely pay attention to that. Usable every 4 turns, though, so you'll steadily get your ghost back. Now, second slot, 5th, like when she's level 5, this is when you start getting these second slot abilities. The first one, combo rate, and on top of that, the burst gauge they get per each normal attack they land or whatever they get smacked is going up. So, if an enemy smacked you and you normally would have got 10 burst gauge, you now get, like, I think 13. And then, if you land a normal attack, it's 13 burst gauge instead of 10, stuff like that. The combo rate increase is also pretty nice as well. with certain characters, you can cycle this extremely well to have most, if not the entire fight with a combo rate increase. So that's something to know. If you're not using that, you're probably using this second ability, where every 4 turns she can just give herself some burst gauge along with another ally. Or she can use it herself and get double the effect. So yeah. Can help catch up on bursts and all that type of stuff if you really want to do that. Third one is only in specific instances where you want to try and do some really crazy stuff out the gate with her. But it's like her first ability, only with a longer cooldown. So there you go. And I think it hits a little bit harder, but it's still just, it's mainly there to summon a ghost. She needs a weapon in order to do that, to really make some good use out of that one though. Otherwise, it's just like some extra steady ghost stuff, but I would suggest using one of the other two over that one. Now, third slot, once level 15, her first ability will consume every ghost she has and increase the burst performance of all allies. I do believe if it's 5 ghosts, it's, I think the highest increase you can get, I think it's a full 500 for burst multiplier. But it also ups the soft cap of the burst damage too, so there's that. I forgot how much exactly though. Second ability I like using if I'm not doing the third one. This one, it doesn't have any cooldown, but it does eat up 2 ghosts every single time she uses it. So if you don't have 2 ghosts, you won't see it lit up. But she'll just burst immediately without eating up the burst gauge, without taking up a turn. Some free extra damage, some free burst gauge fill on other characters too. Free burst gauge herself too if you have a weapon. So there you go for that one. I like using that when she has a weapon. But the third one, you need to max out the 5 ghosts, but then she just instantly fills up everybody's burst gauges by 100. And I say by 100 because she herself can go up to 200. And there's some characters that can do it too. But the whole team, you can basically just full burst. Eats up 5 ghosts. But there you go. I don't know why it has a 7-turn cooldown because you're not getting those 5 ghosts back that fast, but there you go. But the third thing that you really need to pay attention to is the EX abilities, because all 3 of them have an argument for being useful depending on the situation. But the one you use the least is the burst streak one, because when you burst with 2 or more characters in the same turn, you get a streak hit at the end of it, and this ups the damage of it. But it ups the multiplier, not the soft cap. So if you're hitting the soft cap, you're not getting much out of it. The other 15 MP ability is the one you'll probably be using, if not the 100 MP one, because this 15 MP one is going to give everybody 20 burst gauge on the team. So yeah, faster burst cycles. Combined with all the other stuff she can do, she can really fill up burst gauges for your team. So that's very, very good. It is not that hard to get a full burst every 2 or 3 turns with this soul and a decent team. Sometimes back to back. But then there is her 100 MP skill where everybody gets 1.5 million burst damage added to every single burst they do for the next 3 turns. Doesn't matter how much damage you do. So this can get very, very powerful if you can do at least 2 full bursts in those 3 turns. Something I didn't mention in a previous video when I went over Shingen. Or earlier in the video, I do believe. But that said, if it's not 6th anniversary, you definitely will be using that 15 MP one where it's burst gauge fill. Otherwise, after 6th anniversary, use that burst damage plus. It's going to be very powerful. It's going to be very, very stupidly strong. The only time you don't use it is if you can't burst twice in the 3 turns. But also something to know too, her accessibility, like I said, maximum value of her burst gauge has gone up to 200. So she's not going to stay at 100. Even then, she still feels so ridiculously fast. She might be at like 200 burst gauge before some characters get to 50. If you do things properly. So yeah. It doesn't help her that much, but it's still there. But then on top of that too, there's the other assist ability where depending on the number of ghosts she has, her combo rate goes up. But she also has 1 ghost at the start of the fight. So if you've been paying attention, she can have 3 ghosts out the gate right now. Why do I say that? Because of her weapons. Her elemental weapon will give 2 additional ghosts at the start of the fight. So she starts off with 3. First ability can make a 4th. Second ability, if you set it that way, can make a 5th. She's got all 5 just to zip and do the full burst fill for everybody on the team. And that's how you do the quad burst. That's how some people do double burst. That's how a lot of different stuff can go off. If you have her weapon, her elemental attack weapon, that's the one time you're easily going to use this 2C ability, where she's going to summon an extra ghost out the first turn. Otherwise, you may not use it. Now, her HP weapon is just going to increase the special attack power whenever she bursts. So giving everybody some special attack, it's decent, but it's nowhere near good compared to her elemental weapon. But either weapon, when she bursts, she gets refunded 30 burst gauge. So you see why I say her burst can stay up pretty nicely. Because interesting little strategy I'm done with her. Use her weapon, her spear, which is the elemental weapon, where I did the 2 ghost instant burst and just gave herself like 30 burst gauge, and that whole team got 10. And if you've been following, she can have 4 ghosts at the start of the fight regardless. So you can do it twice, and it's like everybody got 20, she got 60. She can do another 20 for everybody for the team, so suddenly got 80. You see how crazy this stuff gets. So if you can get technical with her, your burst is going to really, really get frequent. But that's the whole thing. She's just burst focused. So don't worry too much about ability damage. She does do some decent normal attack buffing for the combo rate, but it's not top tier. But overall, you generally want to try and focus on the burst. She's extremely good on that one. But now, going into the last 5 of these S-Class souls, the thing with them is that they are not introduced until 6th anniversary. They also need 2 of the previous S-Class in order to unlock. And on top of that, they are also needing different sets of materials compared to the other S-Class. You need to be able to do malicious raids to get those materials. So, unless you're paying for the gacha deals, you need to be rank 140 if you're going to try and unlock any of these next 5 souls. But they are, without a doubt, some of the most powerful ones in the game. And I would argue that they wouldn't even be really S-Class. They're more like S+. Some people nickname them Tier 4.5 because S-Class is Tier 4. So, yeah, they're, like, unless you got some really specific strategies with some of the previous souls, these are easily going to be the ones that you will probably use. Starting with this first one, they say Confucius, they say Komei is Kong Ming, or Zhuye Liang, however you want to call her. She's been called many different things. You need Esculapius and Raiko, or Yorimitsu. You need Esculapius, the healer soul, and Yorimitsu, the burst soul. You need both of them unlocked before you can unlock this one. Yeah. And then on top of that, when you unlock this one, she's giving defense buffs. Defense to all souls when she's max level. But she's also up her own defense and HP when she levels up. The thing with these souls is the fact that they can't use any of the special EX abilities from any of the previous souls. So those mastery abilities that needed like 15 and 100 MP, you ain't using them with her and the other S-Class from here on out. And on top of that, you don't get to pick their 2nd and 3rd slot abilities, but they're still crazy strong with how they're used. First and foremost, her first ability. One ally gets an attack buff, a defense buff, a normal attack buff, which is also going up the soft cap, an ability buff, which is going to up the soft cap too, a burst buff, which is also going to up the soft cap too, a vigor buff, I do believe, a barrier, and they get their HP back, all of it. Well, it says full recovery. I think it's up to 100,000, but good luck having 100,000 HP anyway. But so, generally, every 5 turns, she can fully heal one character and give them all those buffs. And those buffs will last for 5 turns. Yeah. That is, hands down, the best single target buff in the game. Along with a full heal. It's like if you mix 2 light characters, Tum and Tish, but turned it way up to 11. So, there you go. This second ability is also why she is extraordinarily good too. She will reduce one enemy's charge So one orb's gone. She removes a buff. She gives compression. I do believe is that ability where that debuff where if an enemy is hit with it, they can't gain an orb. So that's like 2 orbs they just lost. She gives blind, which I think is a stronger version, which will be nicknamed Shade by people. But the big thing, she gives wound. Wound is a very specific debuff where enemies that are affected by that take extra damage. It's like a damage plus, in a way. Or like a final damage increase. So, yeah, very, very powerful. She's the only soul that can give wound, and there's only a very specific Hime that can even do that. But you're generally getting roughly like a 30% damage increase just by landing wound. She's not guaranteed to land it, but she has the best uptime with it. Because I do believe that wound is like 3 turns, and she can use this ability every 4. Yeah. Now, this third ability is a attack and defense down for an enemy. I think that was a 30% one. Yeah, it's a 30% one. So, it's a guaranteed 30% attack and defense down. But it gets even crazier when you look at her assist abilities. Her assist abilities, at the end of a turn, all enemies get a damage minus, meaning that all their attacks have a penalty of dealing less damage, and it stacks. At the same time, at the end of the turn, every ally gains attack and defense. Yikes. So, she is debuffing the crap out of enemies, along with buffing the crap out of your allies, just by being on the team. But then she gets some very powerful debuffs too, some rare ones at that. And she's got a stupidly strong single target buff. Easily one of the best single target buffs in the game. So, yeah, you can see why she's pretty useful. And she's also recommended if you want to do auto ability battle. She's one of the souls that you can just set to that and just let them go and just benefit. Just reap the benefits. So, yeah, there you go for her. But, her weapons, when she bursts, everybody else's burst gauge goes up. So if there's anybody that had on burst, it also helps out. I just don't know how much it is because they don't have that info just yet. But, keep in mind she'll help out the burst cycles if she's the first one to fill up her burst gauge and everybody else is behind. I don't think that's going to happen though because of the buffing that she does, and then on top of that, others might have methods to do it. But with the elemental weapon, the effect of divine arithmetic is increased, which means that single target buff just got way stronger. Excuse me. And then her second weapon, which is the HP one, that second ability right there that had the wound and all that, better chance of landing that stuff. And it's got a stronger effect on some of it too. So I think the shade just decreases the enemy's accuracy even more. So yeah, she's very, very good. If you were at a loss of which of the new Fab Souls to get, she's the one to definitely go for. So as long as you can keep her alive, she'll keep others alive. And it will just compound on each other. Now then, also got to keep in mind too, you're not sacrificing any weapons in order to get these souls weapons, so keep that in mind. But Benkei, you need Romulus and Parashurama before you can unlock Benkei. She gets a crap ton of natural base attack increase. If she's max level, all the souls just got more attack power too. If you can sum her up in one word, it is rebellion. Because her abilities are all based off of rebellion teams. Meaning the lower their HP, the more powerful they get. And she's no exception. But she can get crazily, stupidly overpowered in some ways too. Because here's what happens with her. Now, the first ability, she inflicts some damage to herself. But also damages enemies the lower her HP is. So every 3 turns, she's just nuking the crap out of enemies. Her second ability It's a specific buff called Death, but it's really misleading on the name. What this does is give a 30% final damage increase to all allies on normal attacks. So if they're doing normal attacks, not ability damage or burst, you're going to have a massive damage spike just off of that one. The third one, if everybody's HP is at 50% or less, she can just flat out protect them. But unlike the Romulus protect, this will prevent everybody but her from taking any form of damage. AoE nukes, random hits, single target, she takes all the damage. Now, there's a specific reason why you want her to do that. That's because of one of her assist abilities, where it ups the chances of her being targeted. But at the start of the fight, she has a special type of Indomitable that will never go away as long as there's at least 5 people alive on your team. So the minute there's 4 people or less, that's going to go away and she can die. Until then, she cannot die. It doesn't matter what the enemies do to her. She cannot die. As long as there's at least 5 people alive on your team. So you basically just got that third ability just absorbing all the damage for 2 turns. And she won't die. That is insane. But it gets even better. When the HP is lower, like as HP is low, she's going to increase the combo rate on everybody and increase their attack and defense, and it stacks. So the more turns you have with everybody being at low HP, the more this gets out of control. Rebellion is based off of going on low HP. So is Pride, but Rebellion's a different frame than Pride, because Pride goes to Assault. So Rebellion teams are going to love her. But since she can only take damage for like 2 out of those 6 turns, you're generally going to want to have somebody else can cover the other 4 turns, so you can like keep people alive, because as long as she's using that third ability and there's 5 people alive, you're not going to see anybody die. That is game breaking, honestly. But anyways, when she bursts with her weapons, either one, counterattack is added to all allies, so they just got more assault. There you go. But the weapons themselves, it says increases the chance of a triple attack when the soul is in a desperate state. What that really does is just basically like if her HP is low, she's just going to up her triple attack. I think it's near guaranteed for her to combo when combined with her assist ability, but don't quote me on that. I don't have an exact source for that one. It's just something I heard before. But the second one, and arguably I'd say you get the HP weapon for her if you're going to use either one. Chance to reduce her abilities by 1 turn whenever she gets smacked, and you're going to force her to get smacked twice. So you might as well go for the HP one. So my suggestion is to get the HP one. Others might say to get the elemental one, but my suggestion is to get the HP one because if she's getting smacked for 1/3 of the fight, there's a good chance that ability cooldown can actually go down. So there you go for that one. Now this next soul is very stupidly powerful too. And it is insane some of the stuff you can do with her. But this one is Edison. She's an ability damage soul like Medea. Surprisingly, she doesn't need Medea. But her ability damage can just skyrocket. You'll see in a second. But first, going over her stats. Gains more ability damage, and she also gains more natural attack as she levels up. All souls get more ability damage when she's max level. You need to have Perseus and Kaspar max level in order to unlock her. Again, I don't see why you don't need Medea, but oh well. But here's how she works. First off, she's got Medea's a little ability cooldown thing for the entire team, but it's 5 turns instead of 6. She just can't double cast it. But it's still helpful. What really beefs up her kit is all centered around her first 2 abilities. First ability, she's a poison attacking robot for 3 turns. Whenever a red ability, any red ability on the team is used, she will follow it up with an ability nuke of her own. Did you use 1 ability? 1 extra nuke. Did you use 6 abilities? 6 extra nukes. You see how crazy that can get. And each nuke is doing like 7 digits of damage. Easily doing 7 digits of damage. So she's doing follow-up nuke after follow-up nuke after follow-up nuke every time you use red abilities. The more red abilities you can use on the team, the better when using that first skill. The second skill, whenever anyone uses a support ability, which is the yellow ones, all allies get their attack and defense increased. So the more yellow abilities you have, the better that buffing gets. So yeah, that's insane out the gate right there. However, it gets even crazier with one of her assist abilities. Depending on the number of the times that the robot has activated, all allies gain some HP back and burst gauge at the end of the turn. What that means is that when you use either her first or second ability, then every time those go off, this assist ability gets stronger. So whenever you use a lot of red and yellow abilities, it's going to make this assist ability heal a lot of HP and give you a lot of burst gauge. This will really speed up your burst cycles. You'll heal you quite a bit. It's just crazy. So that combined with her first 2 abilities as the main bulk of her kit is absurd. Then on top of that, factor in the fact that whenever she bursts, her first 2 abilities get 1 turn of cooldown reduced. She already has an ability that reduces her cooldown too. So yeah, that's insane. That's insane. Like, she is very, very good. She's like the face of elaborate teams for the most part. And elaborate happens to be the ability damage one. So yeah. She will deal some serious damage. Then on top of that too, when she bursts, she does additional damage as well with either weapon. So there you go with that one. But if you get the HP weapon, it's going to increase her recovery. But you really don't need that, because you can just get Ascension or just start using more abilities. What you really want if you get her weapon is the first one, because it's just going to up the damage that she deals with that red ability. I think it makes it like, 2 million per cast or something like that. It is insane. So if you're going to use any of her weapons, get the elemental one. Just like Solomon, just like Medea, she's an ability damage soul that really shines with her elemental one. So there you go. Now, this next one, Al-Hazred, I love her design, if you want to be honest. And she's actually quite powerful. You can use her properly, but the thing is, using her properly requires you to use manual. Do not auto ability battle with her. Especially since her main gimmick, you need to summon Eidolons mid-fight. You can't do that with auto ability battle. Do not auto ability battle with this soul. But as she levels up, she gets more base HP, and then she gives every soul more base HP as she gets her max level. This is the one you need Medea for, ironically, but you also need Paracelsus. Somehow. I don't understand why they did that, but again, it is what it is. But what she does, her first ability, it deals damage to all enemies, but whenever an Eidolon is summoned, she uses it again for the next 4 turns. So she can do some ability damage too. It's just not as crazy as Edison can get. Her second ability is where some things really start getting crazy. So she deploys a special type of buff on herself, and like each additional turn, you'll start getting more and more powerful effects and all that for the next 5 turns. Basically, half the fight is like this. And then her third ability, when she uses it, she's got a barrier for 3 turns for some reason. It's welcome, but that's not the reason why you use it. You use it in order to reduce the cooldowns on your Eidolons. This is the only source of an Eidolon cooldown removal I've seen from her. Now, if there's somebody else that did it, I missed them, but as far as I know, this is the only time I've seen anybody reduce the cooldowns of Eidolons. But her assist abilities are also Eidolon focused too. If all the Eidolons have the same attribute, the entire party is going to gain elemental attack. So yeah, and this is a pretty sizable amount too. I think it's like 50%. So It says also active when she's a sub member, but the thing is, you can't make her a sub member. I don't know why they have that. But the second part of the assist ability, whenever she summons an Eidolon 5 times, the final damage of the end party is increased. So that's just a flat damage increase for everybody once she's summons 5 Eidolons. You need Eidolons that are either final limit break, so that you can call them out in the first turn. You might need the Eidolons from the battlefield, where they have like no cooldown, but you can only use them once per fight. Maybe the Divine Beast, where it's the same case, where it's like they got low cooldowns, but you can only use them once per fight. Get Eidolons out as much as you possibly can. And one of her weapons also helps towards that too, I do believe. Because first and foremost, whenever she bursts, the main Eidolon can be summoned. So whatever you set as your main, use them instantly. You can use them the next turn right after. So if you can get burst cycles going, she actually can get quite a lot of summons off of that. But her elemental attack weapon, this is the one you probably want to get. All the Eidolons have 2 turns off of their cooldown at the start of the fight. Combined with the one ability, you can lose 3 turns of cooldown on your Eidolons right out the gate. Those Divine Beasts I mentioned start off with 5 turns of cooldown. If they are max limit break, they just need 2 turns to come out off all of that. So there you go. It's actually quite powerful when used properly. So there you go. Her elemental attack weapon, you probably want to use that. The HP one, it just lets her heal whenever she summons. Don't worry about it. You have other sources of healing usually. So that's something to know. And now I know this video's been long, but this is the last one finally. Alexander. And interesting little side note too, that's my actual middle name. So yeah. But anyways, this soul, more defense as she levels up, more base attack as she levels up. When she's max level, all souls get more attack power. You need Charlemagne and Hector for her, and I kind of see why. So this is one of the few that actually fit with the 2 that she needs. But anyways, first ability, damage to all enemies, and she cuts all damage to herself for 3 times. So I think 3 times she's attacked, she's just not going to take any damage. She can survive pretty well. Second ability that she has, damage to all enemies, gives burst gauge to all allies, and it reactivates at the end of the turn for the next 2 turns. So yeah, she basically triple casts her second ability, naturally. And then the third ability is the one that really makes the bulk of her kit, because it's going to take that Overlord's Fury assist ability and share it with all other allies, including... So she's going to have it and she's going to give it to everybody else. What makes that stronger, though, is her second assist ability. So, here's the whole thing with her. She gets a triple attack, defense, and attack increase out the gate from her assist ability. Whenever one ally is dead, it increases the effect time of her second and third abilities. Another ally dies, they just got extended further. So the more allies are dead, I think up to 4, the stronger these last 2 abilities will get. But you generally only want 2 allies dead if you're going to do that. There's a few characters that get stronger based on dead allies, but this is the first soul that really does it. So there you go. And to know about her second ability too, it's got a 7-digit soft cap, along with the fact that it gives like 20 burst gauge to everybody. So if it goes off 3 times, it's 60. But if she's getting that assist boost, it's going to go off for even longer. So if 2 people are dead, you get ability 2 for 4 turns, and you get ability 3 for 4 turns. So you generally get a full burst level of burst gauge increase from her ability 2, and then her assist ability is just going to be up for more than half the fight for the entire team. But what makes the thing even more interesting with her assist ability is the fact that it increases them. Her assist ability has an increased performance if she has her elemental attack weapon, so it's even stronger. And then when she bursts, she gives herself a barrier, a pretty strong one too. But the HP weapon is the one you probably won't use because it's just going to up her recovery limit, and she can't heal. It's just that the heals is not really going to do anything. I don't know why she gets a recovery limit that much, but I do remember that if 2 or more allies are dead, she's going to get some she's going to get a follow up and a spread, so added to that assist ability, so that's going to be extraordinarily powerful. So that means that all your normal attacks are going to get extra damage, and then on top of that too, they're going to hit every enemy on the field. So 2 people have to die in order for all this to get, for her to get full power. What people tend to do is get characters like Kali or Phosphorphina, I think her name is. Just use them to kill themselves so you can get her, Alexander, to full capacity, then share that passive and just have some crazy stuff going on with your team. But Kali is one of the characters you can get from the miracle tickets once 6th anniversary hits, and you get it from beginner missions. Phosphorphina is the one you gotta pull for, unfortunately. But anyways, that's all for this. So long videos, unfortunately, but there's a lot of stuff to go over these souls. Again, go for the S class and then go for these last 5 if you're unsure about who to go for. The one that says Confucius right there, which is Kong Ming, or however you want to pronounce her name, she's probably the safest one to go after. But Edison's very strong, Alexander's very strong, Al-Hazred's very strong, Benkei's strong. They're all strong. All of the S-class souls later on are very good, all in their own rights, if you use them in specific ways. Usually the ways they want you to use them. But again, up to you on those ones. But they'll take some time to grind out, especially the later S-class ones where they really need the malicious raid mats. But anyways, that's all for this. More guides will come soon. I'm going to end this video here because if you watch part 1 along with part 2, this is like almost 3 hours of video. So there you go with that one. But anyways, that's all for now, guys. More will come soon, and take care.